I've been feeling so much better. Lost 30 pounds, sleeping better, more energy, better sex drive, my skin's cleared up, but my doctor is freaking out because my cholesterol is over 300. You have no idea how many times I've heard this story. It's common for people who change their lifestyles to see a drastic change in their lipid numbers, but is the worry from their clueless doctor really justified? While blood tests are not the end-all be-all when it comes to your overall health, the numbers do paint a fairly clear picture of what's going on in your body. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the basic lipid panel, cholesterol and triglycerides, and see how we can interpret them to get an idea of what's going on in our bodies. First things first, the elephant in the room, cholesterol. According to those controlling the dissemination of medical information, there is HDL, the good cholesterol, and LDL, the bad cholesterol. If you even have a cursory understanding of physiology, you will be led to the conclusion that both of those labels are utter nonsense. This is cholesterol, a molecule that every single cell in the body requires for structure, repair, and synthesis of hormones as well as vitamin D. And this is what the layman would call bad cholesterol. Pretty much identical, right?
Wrong!
In order to understand how to interpret lipid profiles, we need to understand how our body digests and distributes them throughout the body. Say you drink your morning cup of lard before you walk to class because you watched one too many Dr. Berg videos the night before. The fat is triglyceride. After being broken down by the bile from your gallbladder and the enzymes from your pancreas, it will eventually get absorbed in your small intestine. From there, they, along with other fat-soluble molecules such as vitamins and cholesterol, will get packaged into chylomicrons. The chylomicrons serve as carrier molecules so that these fat-soluble components can travel through your bloodstream, which is water-soluble, to where they need to go. They use enzymes on the surfaces of membranes to deliver the fat-based energy into cells, which are active under the influence of insulin. Once the chylomicron has essentially been emptied out, it will return to home base, the liver, as a chylomicron remnant. So now all of the nutrients from that lard have been distributed and you enter the fasted state, where there are no more incoming fats. Instead, you have to rely on your liver glycogen, which we know is damn near empty because of your sworn allegiance to a YouTube chiropractor, and your stored body fat to sustain your energy demands. Your body activates several different enzymes in your fat cells to break down these stored triglycerides into 3 fatty acids. These enzymes are also regulated by hormones, particularly the insulin to glucagon ratio. From there, a large chunk of those fatty acids will be sent to the liver to get repackaged as triglycerides so they can be sent to various tissues via a carrier molecule known as the very low density lipoprotein, or VLDL. These VLDLs also contain some cholesterol in them. These VLDLs are typically only in the bloodstream for a short period of time, delivering the fat-based energy to organs all across the body. As they continue to drop off triglycerides, they shrink in size and become more dense, and predominantly composed of cholesterol. Now, the VLDL has morphed into a low-density lipoprotein, or LDL particle. The LDL remains in the bloodstream significantly longer since it is not just for energy delivery, but also has multiple other functions. It can deliver cholesterol to cells that need it, as well as proteins that can be decomposed for amino acids, fatty acids, and fat-soluble vitamins. Finally, there is high-density lipoprotein, which is considered the good cholesterol. You can think of HDL as a vacuum. While the other lipoproteins deliver fat-soluble goodies to tissues around the body, HDL pulls cholesterol and triglycerides directly from cells that have too much. HDL is good, you want more of it. Overall, the system is more about energy transport than it is about cholesterol. Those controlling the media have pushed the false agenda that cholesterol is bad. They make it seem like cholesterol is the epicenter of lipid transport. Keeping this in mind, it is vital to remember that these markers tell you more about how your body is handling energy rather than how it is handling cholesterol. It is generally accepted that having high triglycerides is bad. The sheep amongst us assume that having a lot of fat in your blood is going to clog up those arteries of ours like bacon grease down a drain.
They're just making stuff up, okay? All right, that's a false.
It might, but not just by being there. As we discussed, triglycerides in the bloodstream come from either chylomicron after a meal or VLDL from your existing fat storage. There is absolutely nothing pathogenic about having triglycerides fuel your cells. Common blood tests don't explain what's going into your cells. It's analyzing the blood where the transportation happens. If your triglycerides are low, that means they're not lingering looking for somewhere to go. They either didn't exist to begin with or already reached cells that needed that energy. Remember, these tests are always taken 12 hours fasted. At this point, the energy should have already been delivered multiple hours ago. The only reason you would retain large amounts of triglycerides in the bloodstream is if the cells are rejecting that energy. That, my friends, is what we call insulin resistance. This single state of energy overload and cellular rejection of fuel is at the core of nearly every chronic disease, from diabetes to Alzheimer's. We'll dive deeper into the implications of insulin resistance in the high energy state in a later video, but for now, just know it's something you definitely don't want. The enzymes on cell surfaces that take in triglycerides for energy are tightly regulated by insulin signaling. If cells are resistant to this signaling, they will refuse to take up this fat energy. This is why triglycerides really deserve more attention, as they are highly indicative of the metabolic syndrome. Triglycerides lingering in lipoproteins about the body can also have deleterious effects on overall lipid metabolism. With nowhere to go, triglycerides are forced to be taken up by HDL, and once the HDL particle is full of them, they need to be sent back to the liver for degradation, directly leading to lower HDL numbers. HDL and triglycerides are nearly inseparable from each other for this reason, which is why the triglyceride to HDL ratio is often used to assess risk. This study found that men with the metabolic syndrome had a triglyceride to HDL ratio more than twice as high as those without it. It is often used as a marker for heart disease, but as we will soon find out, heart disease and insulin resistance are two sides of the same coin. Normally, LDL particles are composed mostly of cholesterol with some triglyceride, but when blood triglycerides are elevated, they spill into LDLs, leading to them becoming smaller and more dense. So not only do high triglycerides lower HDL, they also directly make LDL potentially dangerous. Thus, having high triglycerides is not just an indicator of disease, it is also a driver of disease. These small, dense LDLs are really what we should be focusing on when it comes to disease risk, as normal functioning LDLs are simply a part of the lipid transport system. However, when their structure is altered and they become small and dense, they have a poor uptake back to the liver, so they linger around in the bloodstream. This is a problem because LDL particles lingering in the bloodstream is the most powerful determinant of if they get oxidized or not. Oxidized LDL particles initiate atherosclerosis. This is why those with familial hypercholesterolemia, a genetic mutation that results in abnormally elevated LDL cholesterol levels, have higher rates of heart disease, not because they produce more cholesterol, but because more often than not, their genetic defect is in their ability to clear these LDLs from the bloodstream. HDL and LDL cholesterol numbers seen on your annual blood tests are measurements of the cholesterol in these particles, not the number of particles themselves. Having low LDL or HDL cholesterol could be markers of disease, because that means these particles aren't carrying cholesterol like they're supposed to. They're too busy carrying around triglycerides. In fact, a recent study with over 180,000 participants revealed that those who were not on statins with the lowest LDL cholesterol had twice the risk of all-cause mortality and had twice as many heart attacks. Even more astonishing is that this low LDL group also had, on average, the lowest blood pressures, body mass indices, triglycerides, and the highest HDL. And among women, the higher the LDL, the lower risk of mortality. At this point, if you still believe that having high cholesterol is a bad thing, then you either let the global elite's propaganda campaign brainwash you or are still hanging on to studies done from the 1970s. It should be clear now that having high HDL and low triglycerides are things you want to have. In fact, those measurements together might be one of the most powerful pieces of evidence of your overall health.
If you manage to get your LDL cholesterol below 170, but you still have high triglycerides and low HDL, you're still in just the same amount of trouble. This study's even better, though, because it also has other risks that it's stratified against. But the most important thing I want you to remember is that low LDL, high LDL, does it really matter? No, but we do know this. We know that HDL and triglycerides matter. So check out these other stratifications. You have smoking versus non-smoking. You have physical activity level. Shockingly, physical activity level is virtually the same. It's even slightly better at the low group. And even hypertension. Like, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but I would rather be a smoking, hypertensive, sedentary male so long as I had low triglycerides and high HDL.
Now on to the big one, LDL, your artery's worst nightmare, or at least that's what the Lipitor manufacturers want you to believe. While having high LDL cholesterol could be indicative of having a high LDL particle count and thus more small, dense LDL particles, you won't know until you get that specific test. In general, I think it's pretty safe to say that high LDL cholesterol on its own, provided that your LDLs are healthy and not altered from their natural state, is totally safe. To me, LDL cholesterol on its own is actually pretty useless. If you have high LDL, it could be indicative of multiple things, but first and foremost, it is indicative of how much stored body fat you've been burning recently. In fact, the more food-based energy you've been using for fuel, be it dietary fat or carbohydrate, as opposed to body fat, the lower your LDL will be. Remember, VLDLs come mainly from the mobilization of stored body fat, and LDLs are the aftermath. If you're not burning body fat, there is less release of VLDLs and thus fewer subsequent LDLs and LDL cholesterol. This can be seen from 2 experiments done from a man who is much crazier about blood lipids than I am, as hard as that is to believe. Meet my man, Dave Feldman. Feldman, founder of CholesterolCode.com, performed an experiment where he massively overate on dietary fat to prevent his body from tapping into his stored body fat.
My LDL-C dropped by 1.9. My LDL-P dropped by 1,115 points. You'll find all sorts of articles on the internet on all sorts of different hacky ways to lower it, and I'm telling you that I knew having massive amounts of fat ingested and controlling for all the other variables would result in this massive drop.
He performed another experiment where he switched from a high-fat, low-carb diet to a high-carb, low-fat diet and saw similar results. The only difference here is that excess carbohydrate will be stored as liver glycogen and released for energy preferentially in the fasted state, so the massive overconsumption was not necessary.
My cholesterol dropped substantially to where after 7 days it had actually gone all the way down to 83 milligrams per deciliter. Wow. Well under the optimal range.
It's no shocker that high-carb, low-fat foods marketed as heart-healthy by elitist food industry giants lowers the cholesterol they want you to believe leads to disease. If that doesn't do it, their brother, Big Pharma's got you with cholesterol-lowering, erectile dysfunction-inducing drugs. Oh, and don't worry, they've got you covered for that too. Don't let them fool you. Subscribe to our channel.
You've reached the age where you don't back down from a challenge. This is the age of knowing how to make things happen. So why would you let something like erectile dysfunction get in your way? Isn't it time you talk to your doctor about Viagra? 20 million men already have.